If you ever want to get philosophical with me, bring up Beethoven. Basically, Beethoven is life, and I will die on that rock. And in the classical world, Beethoven's string quartets, particularly, are often held up as the pinnacle of the genre. Today, I'm speaking with members of a string quartet who definitely play Beethoven, but they do something else too. They perform the music of video games right alongside their classical repertoire, treating Zelda and Mario with the same thoughtfulness and care as my beloved Beethoven. Welcome to Zeitgeist Radio, where we learn about musical subcultures from people in the scene. If you love this, be sure to subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to. Let's get into the interview. My guests today are Rosie Samter and Dr. Mateus Souza, members of the Videri String Quartet. Welcome, both of you, to Zeitgeist Radio.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah. Rosie, let's start with you. I would love to hear how would you describe yourself musically? And then Dr. Souza, I'll ask you the same question.
So I would call myself a classically trained violist. I started playing violin, and I started out by playing fiddle and classical music. And then when I was 15 years old, I grew up in northern Idaho, so in the middle of nowhere. And
Nice, I'm a Montana girl.
So when I was 15, my dad found a viola in a secondhand store and bought it, and I started playing viola. So,
Nice.
but so I play, I guess I'm a freelance violist. I teach, but I play in Videri String Quartet. That's really, I guess, how I call myself or define myself.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fabulous. And then Dr. Souza, how about you?
So, Morgan, you can feel free to call me Math. I think I use usually Dr. Souza just more for strictly academic environments. So,
Okay.
yeah. So I'm originally from Brazil. I grew up playing a variety of music styles, from choro, which is a kind of like the Brazilian equivalent of jazz, to classical, to Irish. I played in an Irish band here and there, some rock. And then I moved to the States when I was 17 for undergrad. And I'm a true believer in the omnivorous musician. And yeah, I always go from the angle of if you can have like a great meal of like a little bit from this style, a little bit of that style, and then, get nutrients from all of the styles, to me, that is very, very attractive. And I teach at Central Michigan University. I'm the violin professor there. And it's something that I love to pass on to my students. And this idea that, good music is good music. And something that we find with the work that Videri does and in video game music is that there's just such a wide variety of styles. And playing different styles, I find that really inform not only my violin playing, but also my musicianship.
I can tell already this is going to be such a good conversation. I'm so excited. Completely agree. So Videri is a video game music based or influenced quartet. A lot of people are you both video game players? Like, do you play video games avidly yourselves? And like, how did that connection start? As far as like, okay, the music from the game, like the music is like background to whatever I'm doing in the games, to like, no, the music is something externally that would be really fun to play.
So
Let's start with you, Rosie.
I actually did not play video games at all growing up. I grew up in rural northern Idaho. Very much, I guess you would call it a zero screen time family. Like, we didn't have a TV available for
Yeah.
us to watch. Like, I really my mom homeschooled us until we were,
Oh my God, we're like the same person.
and so I really did not have any connection to video games kind of at all. Like, I really never played them. When I did play them, it was very like frustrating because I wasn't used to any like the controllers. It just didn't like, I'm very much of a tactile person. And so I was asked to join the video game orchestra here in Boston when I was doing my master's program. And I auditioned and I got the principal violist for the only violist for a while. Like when they first were starting out, it was like basically string quartet plus rock band and some other wind instruments. But as I started playing this music, I really started to realize like I grew up surrounded by classical and fiddle music. Like I really grew up, like I grew up as a competition violinist where it's like I was listening only to classical music. Like it was very like I was practicing a set number of hours a day. Like it really like I was homeschooled to facilitate my music upbringing. Um, but what I realized is that this music that I was playing, I could connect with people in a way that I had never connected before. And it's like people feel like we would be playing this music, and it was specifically Chrono Trigger that I actually had like the strongest reaction to, but people would be screaming and it's like they would be sobbing and bawling, and it's like this music means
People don't do that with Shostakovich so much.
not as much, but it's like, but some people do, and it just really depends on like what your connection to the music is, and it's like this music, the connection that it has with people is extremely powerful, and that's really when I was like it's I love Beethoven. Like I am truly happy when playing Beethoven string quartets. Like that is like when I'm feeling like I think the closest to euphoria that I've ever felt. And it's like I I see that same euphoria in people when we're playing video game music, and it's like it's intoxicating. Like you want to share it. So I really realized that video game music is a way to reach people on a level that I don't think I found through music ever before. So that was really kind of my like introduction to video games was through the music. I game now, but it's like I don't know if I would have without the music. But that's truly like through the video game orchestras where I saw that, and it's like I always, it's like I wanted it to be what like the Beethoven string quartets were, and I wanted to be able to take this music and play it in a way, and I was with the video game orchestra for like about it was like a year and a half, and then after I wasn't playing with them anymore, it was when I first started having Videri perform in Boston. So that was kind of like my
Yeah.
introduction to video game music and why Videri kind of started. One of the
And was that like around 2012? Like
Yeah, it was in
when was that?
2012. I started playing with the video
Uh,
game orchestra in 2009. Um,
yeah.
and then yeah, and so in 2012, my friend Jeff Williams, who he wrote all the music for Red versus Blue, and then he went on to do Ruby for Rooster Teeth. He is a friend of mine, and he called me up. I had just gotten back. I had been touring Cyprus and Greece with a pop singer with a string quartet and pop group. And I had just gotten back, and Jeff called up and he's like, "Hey, you have a string quartet, right?" And I was like, "Well, no, I'm sort of playing with one right now." He's like, "Do you want to play some video game music for me next month to open for my band?" And so I ended up putting together a string quartet and getting, I think we had four arrangements. We had like a Beloved Hearts arrangement, and no, it wasn't Beloved Hearts. It was like Final Fantasy. Your basic. I'm trying to even remember what we had. It was like three, and we put it together super last minute. We opened for Jeff Williams and the Freelance Orchestra in Boston before PAX East in 2012. And
Amazing.
that was the beginning of the Videri String Quartet.
Nice.
PAX is another one of those huge conventions, by the way. I don't know if you're familiar. Yeah, are you familiar with it, Morgan?
I'm learning. I know about mags so far,
Yes, yes.
and then
PAX is
VGM
Penny
Con, I think.
Penny Arcade Expo.
Okay.
Yeah, it's another big one.
Nice.
Yeah.
Matt, have you been part of that since the beginning?
Of
When did
Videri?
you join? Yeah.
No, unfortunately not. I so at around that time I was just moving to Connecticut. I also played with video game orchestra with VGO for quite a bit, like recorded and played different shows with them at different places. Um, and I think I joined Videri, was it like 2017, 18?
It was 2018. It might have
Yeah.
been
How did you
2017. This
run
was
I
2017.
think
across
I
them?
think 2017 was the first time I played with Videri, and
Yeah.
I was just like, "Oh my gosh, this is just the most fun."
So how did you come across the scene? How are you in
Okay.
the scene to meet
Oh, all
Videri in
right.
the
Yeah.
first
Okay. So
place?
yeah, we're skipping things. I just wanted to comment on the one thing that Rosie was saying about, like, the connection with audiences, when playing video game music, and it's something to me that is like the most valuable thing that Videri does. It's like we go to play a set at like PAX or Magfest or whatever it is. And we're playing Yoshi, and then some Undertale, and then some Chrono Trigger, and then some um Bioshock, and then we play some Shostakovich, and then we play Final Fantasy, and then we play, and then we play Haydn, and then we play, you know, oh, I'm blanking right now,
Schubert.
but what Zelda, yeah, and then the most fascinating thing is like getting the people talk to us afterwards and just be like, I love this one track. Like, where was it from? Oh, that was from the Britain String Quartet. Like, you should check it out, And then they go like, oh my gosh, this is so cool, And in the same way, every once in a while we visit schools and we go play in schools, and then we play classical stuff, and then we play video game stuff. And they're like, how do you do that? Well, you can do it too. And anyway, that to me is very inspiring. But to go back to your question, sorry for like all the tangents. I have played video games growing up, and um, the I think the weird thing about my gaming experience is that I find that it's different from most people in the United States. Is that like games were rather expensive in Brazil, and so I've only played like a handful of games. And then the thing is that I played those to like I've known like every single byte of information from those games,
Right.
So and I would even sometimes coordinate with like my best friend. So for example, when he had Nintendo 64s, like he bought like Zelda Ocarina of Time, and I bought Majora's Mask, and then like okay, now we beat those games, and then we
And you
exchange,
swap.
swap, yeah, even though like it took me years to beat Majora's Mask, I was terrified of that game. It was such a dark game. Oh my gosh, and the music is like super intense. And anyway, so that is kind of my gaming experience. I just like played a handful of games, uh, mostly Nintendo games, that because that's the consoles we owned, and I just played them a lot, like to the point of like yeah, like I'm learning all of the different parts of the Super Mario theme like by ear, and I try to transcribe them and I try to record them. But like the the sound card and the microphone from the computer that we had was terrible, and so it sounded awful. um, and yeah, and then fast forward a few years, like here I am doing that professionally, and I think to me the most exciting thing is how accessible that has gotten, like in the last few years, like you know, um, I mean, yeah, back from when I was in Brazil, which was like early 2000s. I mean, yeah, the kind of gear available to record was kind of similar to whatever is available today, but it was so much more expensive, Whereas in today, it's just like, I mean, with like $100, you buy a USB mic. Okay, it's not great, but it's already better than your onboard mic, right? And then with like $200, 250, you can buy like a entry level interface, a decent microphone, and you have really good sound quality, like really good. Um, to me, that's like super exciting.
Yeah.
I'm going out on
Well,
tangents
and you
again. I'm
guys are
sorry.
all well, and you're all in different parts of the. So okay, so we have Boston, we have Michigan. Where are the
Hmm.
other two members located?
The other violinist is in Nashville, and the cellist is in LA.
This delights me so much. But also, how do you guys make that work? Because part of classical is like the like leaning into each other and that live like immediate feedback. Um, how do you make it work?
Rosie, do you want to go
Being so
first?
far away from each
I have
other.
some thoughts, but
Yeah, so I mean, I'm going to start with like, I did not think this was possible pre-COVID.
Yeah,
Like, I truly
yeah.
was, and then, when COVID happened, we were actually, so when Mateus was living in New York, our other violinist was also living in New York, and the cellist was living in Boston at the time. So there were two of us in Boston and two of us in New York, and we were spending usually like a weekend in New York and then a weekend in Boston. So we were really rehearsing. It was like 3 days, twice a month, very often.
Mm-hmm.
So we were doing that like pretty like standard intense rehearsal. And then when COVID hit, we were actually in New York rehearsing, like in the epicenter. And
Oh my
Mateus had
gosh.
just moved. And so we'd all
nice.
driven to his place and we were going to catch an Uber back to Chris's place. And
My parents were visiting. They got stranded. Their flights
Oh
were
my
canceled.
goodness.
Yes, we were all stuck in the one-bedroom apartment for months. Yeah, it was great.
but I had said on the way back, I was like, Mateus, do you mind driving us? I heard there's something going around, and I'm so thankful that I asked you to drive us back. Anyway,
Yeah.
as we watched like our world fall apart and Videri was like desperately trying to like figure out how to continue making music, we
Yeah.
decided to try doing a remote recorded album, and we did we threw together an arrangement competition last minute and called it Quarantets, and it had to be from video games and it had to do with the pandemic somehow, and we completely remote recorded the album, which I did like. Sometimes in a group, like in any relationship, you just have to blindly trust that other people know what they're doing more than yourself. And I truly did not think this was going to be possible, but everyone else in the group was like, we can do this, we can do this. And so I said, okay, and we did it. And would
Nice.
I like, is this my ideal way to record an album? No. Did I learn a lot about myself? Absolutely. And like I will never ever forget, because what we did is we create a tempo map with all of our ebb and flow that we wanted. And then the cellist at the time, his name was Jeremiah, still is Jeremiah, still Jeremiah. But Jeremiah would lay down the cello track first. And then, actually, before even then, he's married to this amazing pianist. She would record on the piano so that he could make sure his intonation was matching in key
Oh my
moments.
god, this is
And so then,
stressing me out.
so like he would
Yep.
record that, and then I would record, or supposedly I would record, and then the violins would record over the top. It didn't matter as much, the order after the cello. And I'll never forget the first time that I played the last track. And so I was like the final voice. I started like sobbing because it felt like I was playing with the quartet. Like you can hear who's playing what voice. Like I know the difference between Mateus and then the violinist who stepped in when COVID happened. Eli was one of the founding members of the quartet. So it's like I have a very rich history with him as well. So it's like,
And it gets magnified a little bit because when you're rehearsing, I mean, there is like there are some feet of distance between each person. But then when you're recording remotely, they're like right
Right
here,
in your
yeah.
yeah.
And
ears.
so they're like, ooh.
Yes.
Sometimes like you hear them breathe very closely, and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
it really like made me realize even more, like, because it's like everybody says, like you can hide a lot the string quartet, but you can't. Like you really can't. And when you're recording, you begin to realize like just how important every single like gesture and thought is. And it's like everybody's voice is so clear and so important in a string quartet. And like spending that much time with your own voice is really valuable in teaching. Like it really taught me a lot of how, what, like really what I needed to do to be a better quartet member when we were live. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so it really was like invaluable for that, but also just
Yeah.
realizing that we can do this. And then the other thing that happens is if you've recorded it with like that much, like you know your hard spots, you know how it fits in with everybody else. And so when you do rehearse live, it's a lot easier to just like fit in. And it's like you've already done all the like woodshedding, and then you can talk about like, oh, I was thinking this articulation. Oh, I was thinking this. That's the thing I miss the most is like the interaction of getting to see like how are you bowing this part? Like,
Yeah.
how are you
Hmm.
phrasing this?
How often do you play together live?
A few times a year.
A few
Um,
times a year.
yeah, like last year, we were invited to perform at Nintendo of America for the release of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. That was really cool.
Cool.
And we also played at Megfest, at the gazebo.
We played at Indiana University.
Indiana, we did a residency there.
And so
So it's
we actually too, because Mateus last year was tied up a little with his job, but it's like we had like two or three performances without Mateus. So we
it's like
actually like Videri, the group, performed quite a bit last year.
mm-hmm.
Nice. So that must be so interesting to like be working on all these things remotely and then come together. Is it emotional when you come together, knowing like and play this stuff that you've heard them in your ears so intimately, and then now you see them and you're experiencing them all together? That sounds like a beautiful moment.
It's really like I guess I'll answer for myself because I'm sure it's different, but it's like I like at this point I have known Eli, who's the other violinist. I've known him since 2012. Like he lived with me for a few months when he was recording our first album. So it's like he he's one of the people I've known the longest. And it's like and even like
Yeah.
now Mateus as well. Like we've played so many concerts. So like when I see these people, it just feels like I've known them forever and it just feels comfortable.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna say that when you asked about like, oh, how does it work, with living so far apart and stuff. I was gonna say that I think a big factor is that we have known each other for a long time and we've played with each other, even in different
Yeah.
combinations, for a long time. So like Alan and I did our masters at the same school. He was 1 year right after me, and so we played for a long time. Like yeah, Rosie and I, and like we just like we've been playing for a long time together,
Yeah.
so yeah,
Yeah.
so when we meet again, it's just like, oh yeah, this is yay, my friends.
Fly
Yeah.
right in. Awesome.
And
Yeah.
you also
Hmm.
like you just kind of know like the cellist previously that we had to Alan joined in 2022 I think
Hmm. Yeah, the most
2021
recent.
2022 it was 2021 um and but like the cellist previously to that had been the same cellist or it was like 9 years, it was a long time, and it's like I knew like I could tell how he was going to play by the way he breathed.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And it's
Yeah.
like it's
Yeah.
very much the same with the quartet now, where it's like you just know what people are gonna do. It's like it's very, and it's like it's really comforting because I feel like I'm more of a nervous player than other players in the group. And it's like just knowing that whatever I do, they're gonna make it work.
Yes.
It's really nice. Like
I
it's
love small groups. Yes. Oh, that's amazing. I would really love to ask you both about how you approach. It's been really interesting. So, just quick background is this this last year I went to Mag West for the very first time. I have a friend who's very engaged with the scene over here who invited me up there, and I had no clue what to expect, but musically I'm down for anything all the time. Like, if you invite
Nice.
me, I'll say, yeah, sure. Don't know if I'll like it or not, but I'll go. And it was very interesting. This podcast is not about me, but it was a very interesting experience for me. Just the array of styles and
Hmm.
approaches, and like you hear everything. I've never been, I know I've made this comment on a couple podcast episodes here, but I've
Yeah.
never been in a place where you can walk from one room to the other and see metal and jazz and then an orchestra and then an open jam, like just bam, 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 bam.
Hmm.
So, with that comes a lot of people with different backgrounds and approaches. And I've been so interested to speak with you because again, the classical background is my background. I understand how to approach something classically. And through my own musical journey, it's been I've been trying to stretch myself into other genres and learn how they approach learning or I mean, there's people, Stemage from a few episodes ago who introduced us. We talked about how he can't read music, and yet here he is, one of the most respected and phenomenal players in the scene. So, what has that been like to be conservatory trained, to be a professor, to have this certain I feel like there's a certain sharpness to the classical learning, but I also feel like that doesn't always apply to other genres, or other musicians don't approach learning music that way. So I would love for you to both kind of just have a conversation about mindset when it comes to the video game music, and then also any collaborations. You've both mentioned collaborations that you've done with others, and I would really love to hear your thought process on that.
Do,
I have a lot.
can
Do
I?
you want to start?
Yeah. All right, I'll start, and you like jump in at any point that
Okay.
you want. Okay. Yeah, I say this to students all the time that for you to like make a living with music, you don't need to read music. I mean, Pavarotti is probably the most famous example, right? That like he didn't read music, and there he was, like one of the most famous tenors in all history. Um, I mean, there's so many areas in music too, like making music for ads for brands. Like so many of those producers, they can't read sheet music, you know, and even like in the pop or rock world, yeah, most people don't. Like
Yeah.
they'll read chord symbols, you know, but they don't have to read sheet music. What I always describe to my students is like, look, um, being able to read sheet music is just an additional tool. Like it will allow you to collaborate with more people more efficiently, you know, if you do it. And you also like, you know, whenever you want, let's say you're like I don't know, a rock guitarist or something, and then like you want to release an album with full orchestra or something, or just strings, like Metallica or whatever, you know, then you wouldn't have to necessarily just rely on somebody else to do the transcriptions and like translate your music to all those musicians that they will require you know, sheet music in front of them to perform. But I think this is something that Rosie and I share in common, like a little bit of a fiddle background, which is also very
That's
much kind
true.
of like more ear based. Like you hear a tune and then like you learn it, you change it, you embellish it. This is also kind of typical in jazz.
I'm gonna
You know,
jump in for a
go
second
ahead.
that just to
Yeah,
interrupt. I was a Suzuki kid. I was not a not
Suzuki.
Okay.
a not a I'm gonna call it modified Suzuki because my teacher taught fiddle alongside Suzuki. I didn't learn how to read music until I was 18. And I went to college when I was 17. I spent a year in college not knowing how to read music. I listened to everything before orchestra so I could learn how to, and I would listen to my stand partner. Don't recommend it, but
That sounds really stressful.
well, it wasn't. I mean, the
Yeah,
problem was that I did have such a good ear that it's like if I would
yeah.
hear
Yeah.
it, like I learned the last piece I played on violin was the Mozart Fifth Violin Concerto. I learned it all by ear.
And that's the main point I think is like and people very often ask like, oh, like what is your favorite whatever it is, like favorite rosin, favorite strings, favorite like plug-in, effects pedal, like like basically meaning what is your favorite tool, right? And
Yeah.
I'm like, this
Right
is your
here.
best tool. Like right here, you have two of them, one on each side of your head. You literally will only become like as good as a musician as your ears are. And I mean, uh, sure, some people have more facility translating, like because like everybody hears things differently, right? So it's like the sound waves are hitting your ears and they get translated into your brain. Some people have like they easier time translating. Some people have memory of frequencies where you can like play note, whatever, call it perfect pitch or whatever. Um, but like we can all work on our hearing, like we can all get better at that, and that to me is like the cool thing where it's just like, hey, have you considered that other people hear things differently? Like, don't you just want to learn like how other people hear things? I mean, to me it's like so exciting, and teaching it is really fun.
Well, and like I teach a lot of little kids music, and I just started teaching at a K through 5 Waldorf school, which I actually love because it's all out in the woods and we just get to like play in the woods
Nice.
all day. But one thing that I found really interesting is like I took over this program, and like if I play something and ask the kids to play it back, they play in tune. If I write that down and put it in front of them, they're not they completely stop listening.
Interesting.
So it's like music is a language, and we learn languages by speaking and listening, not by reading and reciting. So I think that the actual like communication with music is so important. And
Yeah.
like I really
So when you're, oh,
go
sorry.
ahead. No.
I was just gonna say when you're approaching a game. So for example, Zelda. Is your approach like I'm assuming there's not many string arrangements for these like are you making these I'm assuming you're making these arrangements, but that is an assumption. Do you write them down or do you do them by ear? Like how do you take that and then translate it into string quartet?
We typically reach out to those professionals that do that well.
Okay, so you do have sheet music in front of you to start learning these.
Yeah.
Yeah, we mostly work with sheet music, but like, yeah, and every once in a while, like Eli, the other violinist, or I sometimes will transcribe something, write something down, and like put in front of the group, try it, and then like change things. That's the nice thing about like when we back when we met in person like very regularly. It would be nice to workshop and easy to workshop things like that way. But most often we work with arrangers, um, and we also workshop arrangement with them. That's also another kind of exciting thing and fun thing that it feels like the group likes to do. Like we like to um, uh, work with arrangers that are like, hey, like, have you considered like that the violin or the viola can do this or that? And then, oh, that's cool. Like we can incorporate it this way or that other way, and it always makes it like a better product at the end. So
And one thing that, because it's like I come from such a classical background compared to a gaming background where it's like
Yeah.
I am bringing with me this very like, like my entire like again, like my euphoria comes from Beethoven String Quartet. So I'm bringing this like very, like classical, you know, I don't know, like sense to the arrangements
Yes.
anyway. So it's like when we are playing these quartets, like we workshop with, it's like when we get a quartet, it is not the same quartet that we are done with. Like there is so much back and forth, which is such an incredible thing that like that's how music has been written for most of history, is like working with live players. So it's like,
Yeah.
but it's like like I feel like working with that quartet, we are able to really like bring like that rich background in string quartets and like even that classical like form and structure to these video game themes. So I think there is like kind of, like a lot going back and forth between the arrangement and like the quartet numbers themselves.
Yeah, and when you have a piece from Zelda and you have a piece of Beethoven side by side, once they're I understand the workshopping part of it, but from there is your process pretty much the same. Like we're gonna make this as alive as it can be, regardless of who wrote it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like
Yes.
Yeah.
one of the best we for a while were working, this was pre Mateus, but like Videri was working with a coach, Lenny Machinsky. He was my viola professor when I was at the Boston Conservatory. Like he was the director of the Apple Hill Chamber Festival for quite some time. Incredible human and incredible player. Um, but he said that every decision you make when you're playing needs to be informed by the harmony. And that
Mm-hmm.
relates to whatever you're playing. Like that's Beethoven, that's Mario, that's Zelda. Like whatever the harmony is doing, that's how you decide, and are we going to speed up, slow down, decrescendo, crescendo. Like so I feel like the theory and kind of like the intent of the music is what determines a lot of decisions, I guess.
When you say intent, what do you mean by that specifically? I'm thinking like because when you say intent in the frame of video game music, I'm thinking like are we setting a scene? Like I'm thinking in context of the game. Is that what you're also thinking, or are you getting more micro than that?
So I actually was thinking completely musically, and so the harmonic
Okay.
intent, but
Sure, sure, sure.
but so I actually feel as though I don't spend enough time. I feel like I've gotten better at it, but it's like I'm not a gamer. Like so much of this
Yeah.
music, especially earlier, before I realized how important it was, I wasn't necessarily like familiar with the games or familiar with what was happening at a particular
Yeah.
time. And I'll never forget, I we were playing a concert. It was a classical music and video game music, and we were playing a piece from The Last of Us. This was right when the first game had come out, and it was one of the Last of Us, all gone, like one of those main theme ones, but specifically it's the one that plays when Joel is rescuing Ellie from the Fireflies in the final scene. And it's this beautiful, slow, like mournful piece that I loved, and I'd listened to the soundtrack a million times, had no idea what was happening on screen.
Right.
And was asked by Lenny Machinsky, who was coaching us at the time, what was going on in the game, and I couldn't say. Like I didn't know. And so I spent probably
Yeah.
like 2 hours trying to find this. It's the very end, watching all the cutscenes and realizing that like here's this beautiful slow piece that's happening. Well, he's like shooting up a whole hospital. Like it's completely like, so like what you just said is like, yeah, we have to know what's going on. We have to know what the intent of this music is. Like we have to know the context, but we also
Yeah.
have, it needs to also be able to make sense outside of that visual context because we're not showing the
Man.
visual context.
Dr. Souza, I feel like this art pour l'art conversation here is really, really interesting to me right now. Right? Because that's what this Zeitgeist Radio, I want, like, I feel like part of what makes music amazing is your ability to connect with it across scenes and across ages. And my first Zeitgeist moment was actually in an opera history class. And I felt so connected. And I'm feeling like, as you're talking, I'm like, this conversation has been going on forever, right? Art pour l'art.
Yes.
Is it, is it necessary to know the context of what's going on? And I also have this argument with my mom all the time. She's a French horn player and I'm a singer, and she's like, "Why do you guys need words? Like, there's no."
So I'd love to jump back in and like this actually I think is going to tie right in with that. So this is like actually the same concert that series that we're preparing for. So same Lenny Machinsky comment here, but one of our arrangements is from Journey, Austin Wintory's Journey score, and it's
That's the story I thought you were gonna tell. Yeah,
oh,
that's
okay.
okay.
And so
Yeah.
like so Lenny Machinsky is like he is such like he truly is the reason I'm still playing today. He's been instrumental in like creating me as a musician and me as a person. Just like he was my teacher, for after I left conservatory. Um, but so he was coaching Videri, doesn't play video games, zero video game experience, none. And we had just played Journey, our Journey arrangement, and he like stopped. He's like, I feel like I'm in a desert. And the four of us just like our mouths were like open. And he also said, and this one too, like so like his we also have a Halo arrangement and it's his favorite. And he's like, it has this religious feeling. We're like, oh, it's very religious. And we're like, Lenny, don't ever look at this game. Like, don't look past it. Like he, like, we don't want you to know that it's just about shooting people. But he was able to, like, we knew the intent. We knew the context. We did not tell our audience anything, and we were able to portray that. So I don't think that we need to tell the audience anything.
Yeah.
I think that we need to know, and that we need to be able to be clear on what the quartet is creating and saying.
Exactly. I thought they were gonna say about the Austin Wintory comment of just we were playing his music, like, you know, and he was there.
Oh.
Go ahead, Rosie. Yeah.
So we have this is a Assassin's Creed arrangement, which the syndicate, which is like violin and cello, so it's great for string quartet. And we have a pretty great arrangement that's like really like Shostakovich-y, but it's like one of the things that happens in video games is for the score has to match the video. We don't have to do that. So we can take time and we can speed up and we can do all these things. And there was this great moment that just like happens in the game, but we like built it up and turned it into its whole thing. And we played it for him. He was in the room with us. And as we were leaving, he like was walking and talking with me and he goes, I'm going to do the PC version. He did not say the PC version. He goes, man, you guys just do whatever the F you want. And I love it. So it's
his favorite parts were the parts that were like not that he wrote.
Right. And it wasn't, you know, that it's like
it was just
you in a live performance, and I say this all the time, that it's like a live performance without the video, you are able to respond to the live audience, to the live room. It's like the whole point of a live performance is all the little things that happen, including the mistakes, including like the reactions, and like incorporating things that happen into your performance, like live performance. And you can't do that if you have a click track or a video. You know, it's like it makes that the focus instead of what's in the room at the time.
Yeah, and I think that the other thing that we're touching on here is the difference between a simple loop versus like a concert piece, like literally a performance piece, right? So it's just like, and then, you know, some people will do that. They will just like, okay, here's a theme, like, and then like hit another theme like right up against it, and like and another one, and that can have a nice narrative to it, but you know, we always have in mind of like, okay, like, what is the story of this arrangement, right? And we always like to approach it from a perspective of just like any other piece of music, right? And making it into a performance piece.
I have a quick personal note to share here. I'm about to have my first baby. And man, pregnancy is a doozy. Holy cow. My holiday break ended up being a little longer than I thought. Thank you for your patience. And looking forward, I'm going to be releasing episodes monthly for a bit. I really appreciate your patience and your support. You guys are so the best. I'm still committed to exploring all the different musical subcultures and what makes people out there connect with different musical scenes. If you're enjoying this conversation, please subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to so you never miss an episode. Or if you're really loving it, you can sign up for my newsletter on my website at zeitgeistacademy.com/radio. For this episode, I'm really stoked to send an overview of art pour l'art and what that's all about. And when you subscribe, you'll be able to access newsletter archives so you can read the material I've done for past episodes. Now, I won't be sending as many newsletters since I will be releasing fewer episodes for a little bit. Okay, enough about me. Let's get back to Rosie and math. Let's shift gears here for a moment. Can you tell me about the goddess arrangement competition? Where did this start? Rosie, is this you?
I mean, it did start within quarantets. So, like when COVID happened, we did quarantets. And like, I thought we would probably get like 10 submissions.
Can you give a background for listeners who may not understand what it is? Like,
yes.
What is it? And
so quarantets was, I guess, Videri's response to the pandemic, where we were all stuck at home. And so we, in order to keep ourselves all like connected, we put out an arrangement competition. And so within this competition,
and thinking of all of our friends who were composers and arrangers who were also put out of work because all the concerts were canceled.
Yeah. And so we put out this arrangement competition, and the rules were, it was just pretty much like had to be under 5 minutes for licensing reasons. One track, it had to be able to be licensed in the States, and it had to do with the quarantines or the pandemic or something. And so like we ended up getting, I think, 64 or 65 scores. It was so many scores. We did not expect it. It was like, it was incredible. Like the level of arrangements, and just like, it was truly mind blowing. Like we were really, and it, because originally, like when you talk about things, it's like, are we going to have enough quality content for an album? And it became, how do we select the best? Like we have so much. And so it's like we ended up with a 13-track album called Quarantets. It's phenomenal. It's one of like the things I am the most proud of in my life. However, one of the issues was that I tallied up all of the inputs. So like every composer would be counted as one. Every arranger was counted as one. Every person who had hands on that album. And I think there were 211 individuals. And out of all that 211, I think 11 were women. So that was a little upsetting, not upsetting, eye-opening, I guess. And, like when we were actually talking about the album, we recognized this, but we couldn't, like you can't change things in the middle. Like it wasn't part of the parameters. And so that was always something that I wanted to address. And so then when people started asking about a second arrangement competition, when we talked about ideas, for me, that was the obvious one. And I feel like it was kind of the one that that resonated the most with all four of us. And so for this album, we're trying to make it, like every decision we make is like, like the artists, we're looking for a female artist. We're looking for every opportunity we can to highlight women. We're trying to do that. But we did decide like the number one priority was that all the source tracks for this album need to be composed by a female arranger. So.
And how many did you get?
We got, I want to say it was a little like 28, I believe. We got a total of like 28 tracks.
Because the other change that we implemented, I mean, we learned a lot of things from quarantets. One of them was that, well, with the 60-something submissions, that meant that now we were all needing to go over all of these, and that took a lot of time. And so for this other competition, I think we implemented like a $10 fee or something.
That's right.
And so at least there is a little bit of okay, like I'm really serious about this or whatever. And we also said in the regulations, like, okay, if this fee is a problem for you, like reach out to us. We're happy to work with you.
Yeah.
So that was lesson number one. And then the second lesson is like, kind of like Rosie was saying, how it felt awesome to play with the other three tracks right in the year, then it's like, well, but the cellist never had that opportunity, or the person who recorded second also didn't have that opportunity. And so now we're doing two rounds. So like we basically just finished recording what we're calling scratch tracks. So like we did a first round, like we recorded everything, and then now we're like getting comments. We are playing those to the arrangers and like getting feedback from them, saying like, hey, like what do you think? And then we're gonna record like the definite version.
Basically giving everybody a chance for feedback.
Yes, giving a chance for feedback.
And
Yeah,
like it may sound like it's a lot of extra work, but it's really not, because once you've recorded it once, you know how to record it again.
yeah.
Yeah.
And everybody a chance for feedback. That also includes us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like whenever how many times like we have like the cellist or some other player be like, oh, I didn't know that you like wanted to do the articulation this way. I would have recorded the differently. So that would be nice.
Yeah. Amazing. Are you planning on continuing this?
Yeah.
I mean, so like people keep asking us like if it'll be like an annual thing. It's never going to be an annual thing. It takes too long.
It's
It
a
takes
lot
us
of
way
work.
too long.
That would be all you
So
did.
I feel like it's kind of turning into like every 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
I do also just feel like we're still trying to figure out like our rhythm post COVID.
Yeah.
Um, because it does.
And also, yeah, also like, as we get back to, yeah, like live performances and things like that. Because, like, yeah, when we were in the pandemic, we didn't have those. And so that's all we had to work
Yeah.
on was,
Right.
the remote recordings. And then now we're like, well, but it's so great to play together physically in the same space.
Yeah.
So, yeah, try to balance.
Yeah, and I think, like I think it's a great, again, like I never thought we would be able to do this. And it's truly like I feel like quartets brought us together as a quartet, but also as a VGM community. And it wasn't just quartets. It was like during COVID, like the the art that happened in the video game community was
Yes.
astounding. And it's like, and not just, like the way that people held each other up was really like people checked in on each other. It was incredible. It was really special. And so I
Can I point to something here? Maybe I can drop this in the chat. I don't know if you've seen this, Morgan, but there's this mega collaboration video that happened during the pandemic that I think like perfectly summarizes like all it is that we're talking about. And it was a Paper Mario collaboration video. I think it has hundreds,
everybody.
hundreds,
I'm
hundreds of
sure
people.
Grant's in
And like
there. Like
yeah, like and like it features like actual video game music composers, like amateurs, like yeah. So whenever you have a chance to check it out, I highly recommend. And then you will see everybody from Videri is there at different points, as well as
and
hundreds of other people.
like I'm gonna actually tie it back to the whole like music reading comment in there, because it's like I think that this video like
Yeah,
really shows you that music, it's a tool. It's a way to talk to people, but you don't need it. Like because if we're all, it's like we can talk to each other, and it's like some, like you talk to people in the language that works for them.
Yeah.
Um
Oh, this just reminded me. Uh, I also have like another band that plays like a little bit more like in like a jazz style, And in one show, we wanted to collaborate with this guitarist who just didn't read music, and so we sent him audio files of our music, and he just learned the entire show by ear and played by memory. The entire thing.
I'm
It's
so wildly, because I don't come from that world. I'm part of the reason I asked that question was I am debilitatingly dependent on sheet music.
I think that's a
Um,
classical music problem, or a classical musician
yeah.
problem.
yeah, the
Yeah.
training. Yeah.
And
Yeah,
like
I was
because
yeah.
I feel like in our group, that's Alan and I. And it's like I really like, even though I do have this like, I grew up playing by ear.
Yeah.
And but it's like then
Yeah.
I went through all these classical conservatories and it's like that's all, like I was so in that world. And it's like now if I don't have music in front of me, I do have this like anxiety that I'm gonna play the wrong thing. And it's like
Yeah, but I feel like both you and Alan, like you have a switch, like that, like when you want to turn it on, it's like
Yeah.
okay, like like when you know that the environment is safe, because like when it's just
yeah,
the four of us, it is,
yes, yeah, that's
it's like
true.
and so when you know the environment is safe, like nobody's recording anything, like you're like okay, like you start having fun, it's like that's it, this is
Yeah,
it.
and I guess like it's just I think it's that perfectionism that it's like been like
Yeah.
drilled into our heads, like getting yeah. So I agree.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm with you on the no
Yeah,
music.
but it's a valuable skill. Like I'm trying to encourage that on my students too. It's just like, every once in a while, like get a piece. Like it doesn't have to be a long one and try to learn it by ear. Like
Yeah.
just, once, it doesn't, it just it is I think it's a valuable skill. Yeah. Just like also being
The more removed I've gotten from college, the more I like the more and more and more I could 1,000% agree with you. Like
yeah.
that's what served me most outside of college. Well, I've stayed in the classical music realm, especially vocally, so I definitely still read music vocally, but vocally is not where I'm debilitated. Like I can learn by ear vocally. It's
Yeah.
the piano side of me that
Oh,
really struggles
interesting.
with that. And so being able to jam, even just read lead sheets was a big like mental shift for me.
Hmm.
And I've gotten a lot better over the years. And in fact, a friend and I are going to start jamming, just both with the expectation of like zero quality, because like Rosie just said about the perfectionism, I have to like
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
drop my expectations down and be like, okay, we're going to learn Rainbow Road by ear, maybe a lead sheet, but that's it.
Yeah, and Rainbow Road
See
is
what
not
happens.
is not incredibly
no, that
easy.
one is
Yeah.
not. Well, and so that's another thing too, is
Depending on the Rainbow
I
Road.
think video game music in general is hard to play on string instruments like violin, viola. Like so you have so
Yeah.
many fifths. So you're having to like
Yeah.
but
Also in a way to read, and I feel like a lot of, especially like I would say like high school teachers fall into this trap where like students ask them like, I really want to play video game music, and then they'll go like, oh, okay, like what do you want to play? Something from Super Mario? Okay, let's go. But like, have you thought about like the theme from Super Mario, how syncopated it is, like chromatic? Like this is like way above like a level two, whatever, like, writing for at least like beginner string ensemble, Like they're not
Yeah.
gonna be like bum bum beep bum, dee, dee, da, da. Like, and it's easier to sing than to look at the page and then like, up, here's a rest, like, oh, I'm playing almost nothing on beats.
you know,
It's
Right.
all
well, and it's like the thing about it too though is like it's like you said, like you put that in front of students, you put that in front of like classical musicians half the time and like we have no idea what we're doing. But
Mhm.
if you just ask people to sing the Mario song, they can sing it perfectly.
That's exactly.
Yes.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so it's like realizing, and in fact, like I'm in the union here in Boston, and so I end up playing some union gigs. It's like not the thing I do a lot, but like I'll end up playing like the video game touring things that go through, and it's like we always joke around that like I sit in the back of the section because I don't play a lot. And it's like I know all the rhythms. I've played all these rhythms a million times. And so like we kind of joke about like, but they have a specific look. And so it's like if you play this music enough, like it's the same thing as like if you play a bunch of Beethoven, you kind of know what you're getting yourself into. So it's
Yeah.
Hmm.
like some of that too is just reading the language and being
Yeah.
familiar with the
Yeah.
language.
Yeah, we've talked about the performances you do for at these video game music conventions. Do you also play in like standard classical? Like you've mentioned sharing Mozart and Shostakovich and Beethoven with the video game community. Do you do it the other way too ever?
Yes, yes, we do. and it's awesome.
Yeah.
Like,
How's
Yeah.
that go? Do people understand it?
yes, absolutely. I
Yeah.
don't, like, again, it's one of my favorite comments was we had just played a concert that consisted, and this was at the Apple Hill Chamber Music Festival. And so it's like their audience is, like other festival goers, and then mostly people 60 plus who have never played a video game in their life. This is rural New
Yeah.
Hampshire. And one of my friends shared this comment with me, but we played a program and we played Haydn string quartet, we played, and then like 45 minutes of video game stuff. Can't remember everything on there, but there was Yoshi, Journey, Halo, and others. And this woman who was probably about 80, as she was leaving, said, well, if that's what video games sound like, I might want to try playing one. And so it's like,
Yes.
good music is good music. And it's really, it's like we play good music. And I
Mhm.
really like I truly believe this. Like I grew up playing fiddle tunes, and like we learned fiddle tunes like I played for contra dances, and you just sit there and you would listen until you knew what to play, and then you'd play along. And that's kind of what you're doing when you play a video game, is you're
Mhm.
just constantly playing.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter the language you speak. Wherever you are, that music is going to sound the same. It's your language, whatever language you're speaking, because there's not words. And so everywhere in the world, that's going to be the same. So it's like I truly feel like video game music is like the folk music of our world.
Mhm.
And
Of our
yes,
time, yeah.
I just we have Joe Newman came on the podcast. By the time this releases, his episode will be out. He plays saxophone, and he said the same thing about jazz. He's a jazz guy, and how video game music is in a lot of ways the jazz of
Yeah.
today. And then you just go back 100 years, it's the same thing. The
Well, and
whatever the trend is, like video game music is it's so like everybody the appeal and the reach is so wide and everyone knows these references. Like you say, almost every kid can sing the Mario theme,
Yeah. And
which
there's
is
the
what jazz was, which is what some of these opera, like yeah, fill in the blank.
yeah, it is the interesting thing is, yeah, like the geographical boundary, yeah, like you said, the reach is just really wherever the cartridge traveled, you know, it's amazing, yeah. Because yeah, and then for like operas, I mean, I was a I was a graduate assistant for an opera class during my doctorate, and I loved the opening sentence from that professor. Every semester, he would start the class with this. Well, good morning, everybody. Here, just the one thing to consider: this class is about opera. There is an infinite amount of sounds that you can hear in this whole universe. Out of all those sounds, the most expensive is opera. It just like because it's like it's an orchestra plus like a set singers like costumes like it's just everything and like the space like just it's just the most expensive and it's like and so like so what would a reach of an opera be? It's like the people that can come to those spaces or groups that can like take that work to other places, right? But like
Yeah,
now, yeah, how easy, especially nowadays, how easy it is to just download a game. You don't even need a cartridge anymore, right?
right.
and I also just think too that it's like there's a lot of stress in the world, and I know that a lot of people go to video games as like kind of like this safe place. And it's like, so when you're hearing this music from a part of your life that is like safe and maybe protected a little, it's like that reminds you of that. And so this music is really important because it really can help us like remember and center ourselves. So,
Hmm.
like playing music that people can connect to is just incredibly important. And playing it with, I mean, like, I'm going to say with reverence because I think we do play it with reverence. Like, we have fun while we play it too, but it's like we
Yeah.
also take what we're doing very seriously
Yeah.
because it,
We also have fun playing Shostakovich.
Absolutely.
And Beethoven. Yes,
Well,
you have to.
all the music, yeah, it all like
Right.
requires that you give what you can.
Yeah.
So,
I would say like life is
Amazing.
too short not to have fun. And also like music is already difficult enough to do well. Like it's already difficult enough, you know? And sometimes yeah, like the classical training and the perfectionism, like it's very easy to just get looped into only noticing the mistakes, only noticing
Hmm.
the things that can be improved. I mean, you obviously need to notice them. That's how you're going to get better. That's the only way, you know. But I am finding it nowadays, especially for my students, that's like important to remind them like, "Hey, did you notice that you did this very, very well?" I think with
Yes.
violin is like even more important because I think it's just with an instrument like the violin, it's just so obvious. And I think voice is similar that way too.
Yeah.
It's just so obvious when you suck.
Yes.
yeah.
You know, it's obvious when you don't hit that note. It's
Oh,
obvious. And
yeah.
it's just like, you know what I mean? But it's
Yes.
like, I don't know. I'm starting to like go back to this speech, graduation speech by Roger Federer. Like, do you know him? Like the famous tennis player.
I know who he is. I
Yeah,
don't know this speech
this is
though.
yeah, this was like hitting social media like all over the place like a few months ago. But it was just like eye opening. He was talking about his experience and recently graduating from tennis. But I mean, he's like a world champion on tennis, like amazing, and he won. He's just sharing the statistics. He won like I think like 80% of matches, his professional matches, his whole career, 80%, which is huge.
Yeah.
But the percentage of points that he won was actually like 54%, which is mind blowing. So it's like if you really think about it, he's almost losing every other point.
Right.
You know what I mean? But he
Right.
won 80% of the games. Like is that and that's like that mindset of like, you know, the mindset of a champion, which is just like, okay, this next point or in our case, like this next note or this next phrase is the most important one. And then like you really go for it. Oh, I didn't hit that note. Okay, it's gone now. Now it's the next note, the next phrase, you know, and like that mindset of just like, yep, that point I missed. It's now the next one is the most important one, you know, and it's just very inspiring.
Yeah.
I don't know why I
Yes.
got into this.
Well,
I
No,
have really
I
good tangents.
classical mindset.
Yeah, classical mindset.
It's
Yeah,
really hard to let that moment go and not dwell on it and let it
yeah.
mess up the whole rest of your performance.
Oh yes, I was just saying like life is too short to not enjoy it.
yeah.
Yes, you have to. So
Hmm.
anyway, yeah.
Well, this is fabulous. I could talk to you guys for so long, but I do have one last question I want to ask each of you. I ask all of my guests this. So, Zeitgeist, as you know, spirit of the times. I have what I've termed a Zeitgeist moment, which is again, this is a musical podcast. So, in the context of music, that moment when you just plug in, like you're playing or listening or involved somehow with music, and it just clicks in and you feel suddenly connected to the zeitgeist of whatever it is that's going on, whatever community or you guys know what I'm talking about. It's a broad definition for a moment that we all know about as musicians, and that's kind of like I think what we all work towards are moments like this. So I'm going to ask you both what was either a recent or a particularly memorable zeitgeist moment for each of you. And while you're thinking about that, I'll go first. I actually had a lot of trouble thinking about one that I wanted to share because there's so many. Um, like when you were talking, Rosie, about your experience playing in the orchestra. For me, it was the Final Fantasy. My introduction to video game music was the Final Fantasy. Traveling, choir and orchestra. That was the first time I ever was like, wow, these people really care about this music and they know it all anyway. So there's so many moments that I could relate to that were like really transformative. I actually want to go back to a very formative, basic memory for me, which was since you are in a string quartet, I studied piano and I majored in piano. pretty solo piano mostly. I didn't really play in ensembles, so that was a pretty solitary instrument. And then choir is a very large scale. You know, there's like the master chorale I'm in right now has 110 singers in it. At the time I was in college, I hadn't had a ton of experience playing in small groups. So as we were going through our history classes, learning about all these, you know, influential people, Beethoven, his life. I told Rosie that when we were arranging this. I'm like, I'm a huge Beethoven fan. But the Beethoven string quartets were, you know, they just kept bringing them up as being so influential. And I had friends who were string players, but they were in orchestra. They weren't in string quartets. So it was a genre I didn't really know much about, and I didn't connect with how influential it was and how just like the environment of it, everything that was possible in it. So the moment I want to share with you is in college, I went to they took us off campus. I wish that I had written down or remembered the quartet we saw, because it was some big enough deal that they took us off campus to see this quartet. And they played some Beethoven and they played these things. And then for some reason, the moment that changed for me was actually when they played Schoenberg, which is not my favorite. I'm a Beethoven gal. But they played Schoenberg's string quartet. It must have been his D major one, which was like his early one, because I was learning about Schoenberg, and I was like, what is up with this guy? Not my thing, not my sound. But this D major string quartet, I think because it was kind of like, you know, he was starting to get a little out there, but still enough of the romantic influence, something happened, and the players brought this thing to life in a way that completely changed my perspective on, like, I suddenly just got it. I plugged in. It was a zeitgeist moment. I was like, the way they were communicating with each other, the intense inflections in tiny little moments. I had never heard a small ensemble play like that before. And even though, again, Beethoven is life, I knew that already. I could connect to Beethoven. I knew what he was, passion and all that stuff. This was Schoenberg. I could not connect to Schoenberg. And yet the way that they brought that together, that was the first time I appreciated the string quartet as a genre, like as a thing. Like, I get it now. A string quartet is you know, it's probably so obvious to you guys both being in that for your whole lives. But for me, that was my like outsider moment, really connecting to that genre in a very visceral way. That stuck with me now when I'm like, oh, okay, like there's string quartet coming, like awesome, I want to go see that, because I kind of get it now. So I wanted to share that moment with,
you know, like, I don't know, like
you.
the that's so wonderful. I think like what comes to my mind is like, you know, imagine, so you're a trained pianist, right? Imagine that like you only have one finger in one hand, right?
Yes.
So, and then like now you want to play something together, and then like you need like three other people,
Yeah.
right? To just be like, all right, like, you know, you do the bass, and then like we'll trade off things, and each person has one finger. And like,
Yes.
and the string quartet is like, you know, you train like that one finger. The instrument is built for like one note at a time.
Yes.
You know, yes, you can play little stops. Yes, you can play chords. It's like, it was not built for that.
Yeah.
Right.
But you know, yeah, you can be really expressive in just one note at a time, you know. And then like now here you are like, oh, but I want to, like, you know, I want like harmony, I want like texture, and I want all of this thing. Okay, I need more fingers. Yeah, but then like, you know, when you have like, you're bringing three other people, like each person has their own, like, oh, like, I
Right,
want
your
the
fingers
phrase.
are really long and can reach
Yeah,
this, or my
or like,
fingers
oh,
are like really good
but
at trills.
yeah, but I hear the phrase this way, and I
Yeah.
hear the bass line this way, and then this is, you know. And so like, whenever you see like a really high level string quartet, this is what happens. It's just like the four coming together into like one vision. And
One
this
hand, you're a hand.
exactly, it's just like, okay, now, I mean, they are one thing, like in your
Yeah.
case, like one pianist, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
A good pianist can do that, like, like several voices, and it's just like, yep, I just have a bunch of fingers. But but like,
Yes.
yeah, and it's like, and yeah, and the more that you play with people and in the small chamber ensemble, like the more that you're like attuned to, like, okay, that this person is hearing this way, and they're gonna go for this thing that's gonna happen. Like, you're predicting the future, and it's like, okay, like let's see. Let's see, like, okay, but I'm thinking this other thing. Okay, I wonder if I can bring that person a little bit my way. Like, there's like so much of that, and it's all like unspoken.
Right. Right.
It's yeah.
What a way
Anyway,
to think about it. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh man.
So anyway,
Well, do either of you have
yeah.
a zeitgeist moment, a moment when you just plugged into the zeitgeist of what was around you that you would like to share, either a memorable or a recent one?
I mean, I really like my zeitgeist moment, one of them. I feel like I have so many. I feel like Videri just
Oh,
like throws them
absolutely.
at you. But like mine was playing at Nintendo because I really, like when COVID happened, I was going through some really personal struggles on my own, just with I was diagnosed with an eating disorder and OCD, and so I was like every classical musician, really struggling through that on my own. And I did not think that Videri was going to make it because like
Mm,
everybody had moved across the country, and so it's like we had
yeah.
gone from rehearsing twice a month to our cellist now lived in LA. It's a different cellist we have, but he still lives in LA now. But it's like, and then Eli rejoined and we started doing the remote things. And then we all agreed that Videri was just going to be something we're doing because we love it and we want to continue, not something that was like we had to prove ourselves with. And so letting go of like, this was now something I was doing because it was important to me and I loved it rather than I have to do this. Um,
Right.
and then we started getting things, and that's when we were asked to play at Nintendo for the Tears of the Kingdom release.
Hmm.
The one video game that I like really dove into and played was was Breath of the
Wow.
Wild. So getting asked to play this was like I didn't grow up playing video games, but it was like it's like they picked the one that mattered to me when it mattered the most. And so here I was like at Nintendo playing for like the game that really was special to me, playing it with people who were incredibly special to me, and it was just like I've given my whole life for this. And the people were so like everyone there was so into it. Every single
That's so
person.
cute. Yeah.
And it's like every single person in that room was there because they loved what they did, including us, including our audience. And it was just like this incredible moment of like, we're sharing this moment of like art and communication. And it was just really incredible to be like, I spent my whole life playing this instrument to see people this excited, and I get to do it at Nintendo of all places. Like this is where my classical journey has like led me.
That's amazing.
Nice.
Oh, that sounds really special.
Yeah. Oh, wait, is it my
You're
turn?
Dr. Sosa.
Okay. Oh my gosh. Okay, I have so many. Can I share a few?
Sure.
Because I feel like, yeah, also like, so I mean, Rosie knows this. Like, I'm one that like loves like locking eyes with people as I play, and in the classical world, that's not like super common. Like, you know what I mean, right?
oh,
Like, I guess like more. So it's just like, people are like usually like more focused on the sheet music and like, or whatever it is. I've had people like tell me like, hey, can you stop like looking at me because it distracts me. I totally understand that. That's totally valuable. Um, but I love like looking at people while I play and then like connecting that way. And I mean, there are just so many moments that like I get to sit like a lot of times like right across from
Yeah.
Rosie, so like she's one of the first people that I like, choop, like, and I look, and then like she looks back, and you know, it's like there's so many moments where in the live performance setting, like I'm thinking, for example, like the PAX East performance with like just standing room only, people like at the door, they can't come in because of fire hazard, and like you know, and we're there playing, and then like I look over at Rosie, and she looks over at me. It's like we're giving it all. You know what I mean?
It's
Like
Yes.
it is,
th
yeah. And it's like,
those
go ahead.
connections, like these people are right there with you. You know, it's like you look up
Yeah,
from your music and it's like Eli will be right there. You know, like
yeah,
and you can it's like it's incredible. And I try to do that sometimes when I'm playing not with Videri, like with other quartets, and it's like, oh, never mind, I won't stare at you while you play. Like I know that might freak you out, just what you were saying. It can be
yeah,
unnerving.
yeah. But anyway, I just love that, and and it's like no words need to be said. It's like you know, you just look at the person. All the communication is happening right there. Like you're both being the music, like different fingers of the same piano, right? And you're both like giving it all and like being in the moment. I think like I find it very interesting like this the way that you approach like this like zeitgeist, you know, because like I've never thought about it in such a micro level, you know. I've always thought about like
Right.
okay, yeah, like
It's
it's
usually very broad.
yeah, it's like the culture of the time. It's just like, but it's very interesting to think about. I mean, I very often think about this because uh, growing up playing the violin, I had to like I still have to make conscious efforts like every once in a while to just be like no like I am now being the music like and being in the moment, right, where it's just like it's so easy to get dragged into like oh here comes that shift that is difficult, here comes that pitch that I have to reach, or here comes that one passage that is like you know, but it's just like it's so obvious, but like you just have to train, right? Of like, okay, you already put the work is done. Now, like you have to be in the moment, um, and it's really, I mean, every time that it happens, it's just amazing. And I mean, I've been learning how to do that more and more, and it's like super gratifying the more that it happens. Another great moment that I can think of is like. I've performed like a few times, like for like different hospitals or like children's hospitals, and man, like those are some really special moments. I can think of like at least like a dozen or more that you know like you see people that they have to spend so many hours a day like next to a dialysis machine or whatever it is, and then like there you go and you bring some music. That's the good thing about like our instruments, like we can just like bring them and then we play, there it is, art. Right, and it's like and then the art is gone. But it's like really some amazing moments. And then the last one that I wanted to share was like just thinking of that performance that you just mentioned, Morgan, of the string quartet. Um, I have never been like a big fan of opera, like from undergrad. I just
Yeah.
didn't understand. I was just like, okay, this guy just said that he lost his wallet. It has been it has been
Three and a
five
half hours.
minutes. Yes, it has been 5 minutes, and he's still saying that he lost his wallet. Like, what is wrong? You know what I mean? Like, and it, and then on my first visit to New York, when I was just going to have lessons with different people, I stayed over. I shared a couch with a friend who he rented a couch from somebody. uh, and he said like, "Hey, have you ever been to the Met?" And I said like, "No." And he goes like, "Okay, this is how you get rush tickets. You're gonna go to this place there at this time, and then you're gonna show them your student ID, and then you're gonna get a rush ticket, and you're gonna go and watch whatever opera that they have." Like, but what are they playing? And he's like, "I don't care, but it doesn't matter. Go
Yeah.
watch." I'm like, okay, and I think it was L'Elisir d'Amore, the opera, which is not even like that popular, right? And I'm like, okay, whatever, you know. So I buy it, you know, and then I go and like Then you sit there. I mean, the space is incredible, and then you start hearing the music, and the music is like sounding just incredible. And then you start hearing like the singers, and they sound just incredible. And so then, like all of a sudden, well, there was this one particular moment where like this one tenor was singing this aria, and like he had this line that like was like climbing up in pitch, and the dynamics were like, going down. So it's like getting softer,
Oh,
softer, softer, and softer, and then like I
that's
could
evil.
feel,
By the way, evil.
yeah, I could feel like everybody in the whole audience like was like holding their breaths like with this singer. You know, he just had everybody there with him. And it was such a powerful moment. And I was just like, wow. And then like I understood. I'm like, okay,
Yes.
yep, because when it is this good, like you just want to like bathe in this sound. Like it's just
Yeah.
like, oh, what? 2 hours went by. What? You know what I mean? Like, how's that possible? Yeah, because you were bathing in just amazing like art, an amazing
Yes.
performance, you know, and
Yes.
and
I
that
love that.
in
Yes.
those moments you're just like you don't want them to end, you know, you just want to like be there. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and sometimes it takes something a little outside of your normal day to day, to make that happen. I see Beethoven every day. I was practicing sonatas. I was practicing, I knew what he did. And then it sounds like, for you, you have your own things where totally comfortable. And then sometimes it takes that outside, like, oh, I don't like this normally.
Yeah.
And
And I think
then when
like
you
some
connect, you're
people
like,
like
oh,
and maybe it's because like of playing the violin and like developing a very picky ear, you know, but like and I think some people they can make that jump of like okay, like I can get the magic from a performance that is like not like top notch, right? But I always tell people like, yeah, if you don't like opera, okay, have you gone to the Met? Like I always, you know, or the Lyric Opera of Chicago. I mean, it doesn't
right.
have to be the Met, but like you know, like a good like opera company.
Well,
And it's like, yeah, it's just like try it, just try it. And
Yeah.
like you
Yeah.
said, like in the beginning of this interview, of like you know, you seem to be a very open minded person, and it's just like you know, like music, yeah, I'm here for that, you know. And
Yeah.
then like you go with an open mind. I mean, yeah,
You never know what connections you'll make. That's why I call this Zeitgeist Radio. Is
exactly.
I've had people on here. I never expected to have a string quartet who plays video game music. I didn't even know that existed. All the people on here, and I'm like, I didn't even know your scene was a thing, and yet I connect with you.
Yes.
There are things that we can all. I've never had anyone say I don't understand that Zeitgeist movement. Everyone's like, oh no, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yep.
So. Oh, well, both of you, thank you so much for being on my podcast. I really appreciate your time.
thank,
Thank you for having
yeah,
us.
thank you for having us.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Zeitgeist Radio. To uplevel your musical journey and become a music student for life, join the Zeitgeist Academy by signing up for my bi-weekly newsletter. You'll get exclusive content, blog posts, and behind-the-scenes insights. I love putting it together, and you'll love reading it. Head over to zeitgeistacademy.com/radio. That's ZEITGEIST academy.com/radio.